And I literally said to her, if this is how you're treating your female patients, shame on you. And I am now speaking for every woman that is a client in that office and any other office on this planet right now. Because if this is how I've been treated and I've been willing to speak up and speak up on something that most women are told by commercials, oh, just wear a pad, oh, just wear a diaper, oh, just wear this and go on with your life. How many women are walking around taking themselves to the pharmacy and doing just that and don't know that they're walking around with a life-threatening disease potentially?
Right,
How many?
right.
And how many, because they're too embarrassed or because they've been blown up and told that this is what women go through, that they are literally being pushed aside. And I said, so now it is your responsibility to align me with the best gynecological oncologist you have points of reference to. Welcome to season 3, episode 17. Unbelievable. This is a very turn the table interview with my dear friend Marie Zelenka, who proposed the idea of interviewing me to ask me anything pertaining my cancer journey. So join us as we sit down for this very passionate, authentic stream of consciousness conversation between the two of us. The 9-hour time difference because she's in the Netherlands while she interviewed me. So I look forward to you pulling up a chair, grabbing that cannoli, because here we go. Look at how gorgeous you are.
You look amazing. I love it. I love it. Hi, honey.
Hi, honey.
Wow. Wow.
Well, I have a hat here because I might get cold because it's warm and I have a fan going.
Right.
But yeah. Hello. Here we are.
Here you are. Wow.
Look at you, how gorgeous you are.
Thank you. It's nighttime here. I'm in
I know.
I have my curtains closed. I think it's still a little bit light out, maybe. No, it's gotten dark now. So I just have my curtains closed. Anyway, hi, honey. So now
Hi,
what do we do?
gorgeous. Well,
So now
what
we
do
talk.
we do? Now we talk, and you ask me anything you want to ask me, because I'll just kick it off and just say that first off, your name is Marie Zelenka, and you are currently in the Netherlands where you live.
Right.
And you and I have known each other since 2002 when we first started working together until 2006.
Okay.
And you returned from the United States, from LA to the Netherlands in 2009, which broke my heart. I swear, like out of all the people I know from like summer camp and homesickness and all the things, it's like, I was like, what is it about our relationship that made my heartstrings just like really like just sob? And so I describe our relationship as a connection that it's a soul connection, that we're tied together in a way that's unexplainable, and that we have these very deep, loving conversations. And we are two women who love each other and are not in competition with each other and accept each other and raise each other up, and have seen through the years now, I mean, close to 20 years, for goodness sake. Well, it is 20 years. Actually, it's
Good.
coming. It's going to be 21 years. Holy smokes. Yeah, we've just seen each other go through a lot of things, but not that it's been dramatic so much as just live our lives, and most of it not together. And you said to me the other day in a conversation that we were having that you felt it would be a great idea to, since I have my podcast, that there should be a conversation where I'm asked the questions, and especially having recently been diagnosed and gone through this journey of early stage ovarian cancer, and now having completed my chemo treatments, and that you would love to do that with me if I was open to that. And I said yes. And I said that you could ask me anything, and you felt it would be a great way of people hearing my perspective. And from that point forward, I open up the floor to you to say, you know, I love you. And I couldn't imagine doing this with anybody else. And you can ask me anything you could ever imagine. And I'm going to share with you how I feel.
Right. Okay. And I'm curious to see what I'm going to ask you. I'm curious to hear my own questions. But
Yeah.
I think what, and thank you, first of all, for being open to this, because, it's a very personal journey that you've been going through, and you've been very open about certain things, but not everything. Because how does one do that anyway? I wonder, even, do you even know yourself what you're going through? What's your, what's that whole process like? So, so you've been sharing and you've been inspiring people, but what is it really like when you're sitting in a doctor's office and they tell you, okay, we found a mass? What does that even mean? We found a mass and we need to remove it because it's, it's dangerous, and it needs to be removed, and we need to go through all kinds of tests and see where it's at, and possible follow-up treatment and all the stuff. So then what happens? What happened to you? How do you react to that?
Oh, well, I mean, here's the crazy thing. So some people know, some people don't know, but most people don't know, is that I had ironically been in a really healthy place. I had just dropped over 50 pounds, and I was really strong physically. And then completely out of the blue, I think it was somewhere in August, I started literally excreting a little moisture between my panty liner, and it wasn't incontinence, and it wasn't like a sense of urgency, it wasn't any of that, but I knew that it wasn't normal. And I said, this isn't normal, and I started speaking up. Now, ironically, I think if this happened to most women, they would just go off to the pharmacy, get some pads, get a tampon, and call it a day, and be too embarrassed to mention it. Well, Felicia being Felicia, I'm like, hello, this isn't normal. What the fuck is going on? I'm not living like this. I have no reason to have this going on. What the hell? Like, give me answers. And the replies I was getting was, oh, well, this is just what happens to women. And I was like, horrified by this response. And I was like, literally, if these are the answers you're giving women, shame on you. And I kept speaking up. And I wasn't speaking up like to the people I was working with or my immediate peers. It was the medical field. And my husband certainly knew.
Because it's, sorry for interrupting you, but because it's a little bit embarrassing. Like, I'm leaking.
You're leaking.
Oh,
yeah, you're leaking. Yeah.
Oh,
and it's like, excuse me, but as I put it, my vagina is scientifically tight, I have not delivered a baby. I've not added more weight. I've not created any pressure on my walls. Like, and
Right.
from a medical perspective, and you and I both come from, you know, your family having been in medicine and you being around healers and being, you know, a healer yourself, and myself being a healer in pre-med. We both have this scientific mindset, and we both are women who know how to speak up for ourselves and others. So yeah, it's embarrassing, but at the same time, I wasn't embarrassed, because if I
Right.
was embarrassed, I would never have said anything. I would have just quietly gone up. I was more embarrassed buying the pads than I was speaking up. That's the
Right.
joke.
Right.
And I was a month later, after this leaking started to occur, that and then I started to see blood. And I was like, whoa,
Oh,
wait a minute.
was it,
I'm
did you get scared at that point? Did some fear creep in? Like, motherfucker, this could potentially be something super wrong, or weren't you, or that wasn't the case yet?
well, I knew something wasn't right, but my brain never went to, like, I have a life-threatening disease.
Right.
And it's interesting because being the person who's pretty analytical, as we both are, it is interesting that my brain never went there. And I think that that was probably a survival tool more than anything. I knew I was being proactive, and I knew that I continued to speak up, but I didn't go to this detrimental mindset space. I just kept being proactive. So when the bleeding occurred, I knew that, having been through thyroid cancer a decade before, and
Right.
having had iodine radiation, and having had my body be thrown into menopause a decade before, when I wasn't menopausal, and not having bled since February 2012, I knew that this was not normal. And I knew that this needed to be more deeply resolved. And, you know, sadly, for somebody who I trusted, which was my gynecologist, again, it was like, okay, well, let's do an ultrasound. And we did an ultrasound, and there was supposedly a small cyst that we were going to follow. Well, I'd never gynecologically ever had any issues whatsoever. So that was not normal to have a cyst. And I trusted him. And then he took it so far as to say, well, I think your walls are maturating. And I was like, okay, look, you know, I'm perfectly fine over here. I'm not in denial of, like, maturation, but now you're talking about something that is questionable, and went so far as to be like, so therefore, I think we should do this process called the Mona Lisa. Well, Mona Lisa is something that the French, forgive me, God love the French, but a French doctor came up with the idea, as I put it, you know, I think it's like the 70-year-old doctor that wants to feel like he's fucking a 20-year-old. And because God forbid the woman's vaginal walls aren't stimulating to the man's penis. Well, excuse me, but how many women say to men, I'm sorry, your penis isn't big enough and I can't feel it? Like, excuse me, like, who the fuck does that shit? So, you know, God, because, you know, that would emasculate more men than we can imagine. And there's plenty
Right.
out there, and that is not a disrespectful statement. That's an honest
Right.
statement.
Right.
And, you know, I mean, we want to be stimulated too, and that's one of the many ways. And so needless to say, I was like, oh, Jesus, okay. So he's like, I recommend we do this process. There's a 50-50 chance it could work. And so we'll go forward. But it was an out-of-pocket expense. It was considered a cosmetic surgery or a laser procedure. And it was a 3-step process, that you did a laser surgery, so to speak, laser, not invasive, but then you recovered for like 4 to 5, 6 weeks, and then you did it again, recovered, did it again, recovered. Well, I went through 3 processes and nothing changed, and I got like enough already.
The
I want
bleeding kept.
the leaking, the bleeding, all of it. And I would not feel the leaking. So that was the other thing. Like, I'm really in tune with my body. And you would think you would, a woman knows when she laughs and she
Right,
excretes or something. That was not
right,
happening here. It just
right.
was there. And it wasn't like I was soaked, it wasn't anything like
And
that.
was it urine or was it something else?
It was urine. So it was
Oh,
just it was just clear. It wasn't milky like a UTI. It wasn't anything. It wasn't anything. It was just clear, and it was just like, it was like getting like a little bit on like this. And so it was really like, okay, how do you not feel that? My nerve endings are good down there, like all the things. How
right.
is this that this is happening out of nowhere? So then I said, hey, enough already. I want imaging. And my gynecologist was out of network. He was my only doctor out of network. And inevitably I said, you need to talk to my internist because I want to make sure that this is covered medically, because I don't know how much an MRI costs. And I didn't know and I just wanted to be smart about all things. Well, where I started to get like more worked up was when it took them several weeks to communicate with my internist. And I'm like, oh my God,
Were
I'm
you were you at
multitasking.
were you at that point getting worried? Like possibly like or still not yet at this point?
Strangely, again, I think some sort of like something was like saving me inside from going into doomsday.
Right.
Like, seriously. And yet the irony is time was of the essence.
You knew something had to be like we have to move on this. Yeah.
Yeah, we have to move. I need
Yeah.
answers, but you're all not moving fast enough. And that's when I got upset and I was like, you are sitting in an office with computers, phones, fax machines, all the technology. I'm working on location all over the place. I can multitask. I can get things done. How is it that you can't communicate with another doctor's office? And it ended up that I reached out to my internist where I found out I had to come in for a referral. I went in on a Thursday. It was the week before Thanksgiving. And he immediately got a referral for an MRI. And I had an appointment the very next morning at 7 a.m. at UCLA at the main campus in Westwood. And I went off. Matter of fact, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law were here already for Thanksgiving holiday. And I went off to do a commercial. And I briefly stopped home and then I went off to do my commercial. And I'm standing there in a parking lot in Glendale, California, when I randomly get a phone call from my internist at like 11 a.m. And I knew that that was not normal. Like if he's going to make a call, he's going to call between like 4 and 6 in the evening for his
Sure.
follow-ups.
Yeah.
But instead I get this phone call at 11 and I was right in the middle of work and I knew I need to answer it. And that's when he said he just got a report back from the radiologist. And the radiologist said, I believe your patient immediately needs to get to an oncologist. I believe she has ovarian cancer.
Okay.
And I just lost my shit.
Right.
That's when I got full blown mad. And I wanted to take people out.
Mad at the world, mad at
the people that weren't listening to me.
right.
Mad at the people who I entrusted and that I spoke up to, and basically, and I thought to myself, if you're speaking to me this way, who's speaking up, how many women, like I literally went there. I went into a much bigger picture. If this is happening to me, how many other women is this happening to? And how many women are dying unnecessarily? And
Right.
like, then I went into the full blown, and I'm working. I'm still actively doing my job while my brain is off in the holy shit mode. It's the week before Thanksgiving. I've just been told I most likely have ovarian cancer and I need to get to see an oncologist, and it's the holiday. What the fuck? And it was as if I took my vehicle, my body, and my mind, and I put that shit into high gear. And I went, all fucking bets are off. Get the fuck out of my way. And I literally said to my internist, you better get me the best gynecological oncologist you can get your hands on. Stat. I want all the blood work for cancer workup now. I mean, I was talking like a doctor, and I'm not a doctor, and yet I have this knowledge of, I need to get as much information for whomever I'm going to see collected now. So there's no like waiting, because it's all about test for results to get answers. And thankfully, my internist went, he referred me immediately to UCLA team. But then the irony was they couldn't see me. So this was November 19th, 2022. So just this past November. And that was a Friday. What I got back that day from the UCLA team was they couldn't see me until December 15th. And I went, excuse me? I don't think so. That's not happening. And then I proceeded to call my gynecologist's office, who's considered to be one of the top West Side LA teams of gynecologists. And he's been with me for years, and he will remain nameless. But, my trust in that process went out the window. And I called his office to speak to him directly, and he wasn't in the office, and they put one of his partners on, who I proceeded to ream a new asshole to with no and I never even used to know that term, by the way. and but I did, and I literally said to her, if this is how you're treating your female patients, shame on you. And I am now speaking for every woman that is a client in that office and any other office on this planet right now. Because if this is how I've been treated, and I've been willing to speak up on something that most women are told by commercials, oh, just wear a pad, oh, just wear a diaper, oh, just wear this and go on with your life. How many women are walking around taking themselves to the pharmacy and doing just that, and don't know that they're walking around with a life-threatening disease potentially? How many? And how many, because they're too embarrassed, or because they've been blown off and told that this is what women go through, that they are literally being pushed aside. And I said, so now it is your responsibility to align me with the best gynecological oncologist you have points of reference to. And she proceeded to give me 3 names. One who was an associate with USC, one who had been associated with UCLA, but had now just moved to Orange County, which where Orange County is, which is south of Los Angeles. And then one that was associated with Cedars-Sinai. And my gut was call Cedars-Sinai. And I proceeded to call Cedars-Sinai immediately. Again, I am still actively working and shooting a commercial while this is all going on.
And the fear factor is still not happening. No time yet. No time to be scared.
I mean, I'm mad.
Right.
I'm mad because I've just spent 4 months speaking up.
Right.
So I'm in mad mode while I'm being productive and professional on a set. And, thankfully, I was working with a friend who herself had just survived breast cancer. And so during the pandemic, so she was very acutely aware of I've watched women in our industry the film and television industry, who, you know, a woman who could have just like, for instance, I'll use this example. I've seen women run departments who literally hire somebody who's just had a baby and they're nursing and they need to take an hour to go excrete their milk to save for their baby. And
Right.
they have been the most lacking empathy kind of human. I mean, I can't even call them human beings. And I've been absolutely dumbfounded. Like, you realize this isn't even legal. Like, you
Right.
realize that not only is it lacking empathy, and you as a head of your department are mismanaging this situation. And so I was grateful I was with women who knew me, loved me, cared about me, and were giving me all the grace. And they know me. They know, like you know me, how I show up full tilt, like completely committed. I'm not going to drop the ball. No, I'm here, but I'm also handling this at the same time. And they just gave me the grace and the space. And they pretty much watched me like move mountains on that day alone. And so what happened was, in my calling Cedars, I was lucky to speak to this female in this office with this to this particular gynecological oncologist, who said, I pulled up your MRI right now. So she had it in front of her, and she literally, and she said, thanks to computer systems, and she said, this person is very busy, but when he gets your MRI, he will determine if he can make space for you. And I went, okay. And she said, so we'll just see. We'll cut to 2 hours later. I'm getting a phone call from that office saying he wants to see you this next Tuesday. And that was the Tuesday before Thanksgiving in the United States holiday, where everything shuts down. And I said, well, Jesus, thank God there's angels, literally. I mean, I remember my saying that, and I couldn't thank her enough. And I remember I had to sign all these, you know, DocuSign documents and do all this stuff to clear this, you know, visit and meetings and all the things so they could get all the documents they needed. And of course, I remember coming home that Friday night. And I mean, I remember having to call my husband, Randy, and he was at work. I don't even remember the conversation. I just remember thinking, how am I going to tell my sweet husband without
Right.
freaking him out?
Right.
And I don't remember really what I said. I really, really don't. I don't. And I'm sure that, you know, I can't speak for him because I've never asked him like what went through his head at the moment, but I'm sure it wasn't good. And I remember coming home that night, and I believe he was already home, and my mother-in-law and sister-in-law being there. And at some point, him pretty much, and you know, Randy's very close to his chest about things. And I believe he kind of set up the conversation to open up the floor for me to tell my mother-in-law and sister-in-law. And ironically, my mother-in-law, who is now, gosh, I think she's 87 now, just is in her, I think just got cleared from like 5 years of going through breast cancer post, like, so she herself was like really in the, you know, the mindset of, and she's very much a praying woman, and you know, all the things that, you know, we all do our things differently. I'm not
Right.
who she is, but I
Hmm.
respect who she is. And she just like, she just went into this very kind, sweet, like ever encompassing, like it's all going to be great and it's all going to be good and we're going to be around you and blah, blah, blah. And I know that, and this is part of the blur. Over that weekend, I think it was that weekend or that week. I really don't remember that. I remember at some point, like Randy really needed to be spoken to, and I think that there was a way that, there's kind of defense mechanisms coming up because he's fearful, he's scared, he's all those things. And his mom said, I'll handle it. And she did. She basically set him aside because I think really had a hard time dealing with his mom being sick. Never was there, he never went to Texas at the time. And that's not making him wrong or bad. I just think it was his own, like, God, if I lose my mom, what, blah, blah, blah. And so she just knows her son, like I know her son. And she asked to speak to him and brought him in the office, and they had a heart to heart where I know he broke down, and she was just like, you're going to have to be there for your wife. And though I know you are, like, it's a whole nother level, and she's going to need you, and you're going to need to be there, and you're going to need to buck up. And she really straightened him out. And I'm very grateful to her for that, because she's that kind of a strong female presence that it was too much. It was more than it was enough. Like, I was trying to put all the Legos in place, so to speak.
Mhm.
And, we were so lucky. Like, I don't doubt that we were being watched over, because things happened so quickly from that point forward. That Tuesday we were in that gynecological oncologist's office, and he literally, after his residents had been in the office pre-questioning me, when he walked in, it was like light was around this man. It was like an energy source. And you and I get that, and he sat down. And he introduced himself to Randy and I, and he said, so I understand you haven't been heard. And I shook my head, and he went, I'm here to hear you, and I'm here to cure you. Well, in all my years of being around doctors, I've never heard anybody in such a calm, confident, clear, human way take the reins. And I was just like, all right, I'm in the right place, and we're really lucky. And from there, he proceeded to do what's called a corkscrew pelvic exam. Now, imagine a wine bottle opener, as I put it, but imagine it as an art piece made in plexiglass, created on steroids, that's now going to go into your vaginal walls.
Right.
Because they're trying to see if any matter comes off your walls.
Okay.
And thank God nothing came off my walls. So he was like, oh, this is great. Like, this is really hopeful.
Okay.
And then he was standing over me, and he said, so I understand you've lost like over 50 pounds. And I said, yeah. I mean, and he's standing over me on the, the table. And but in a very not like, alpha way, just in a like, this is a circumstance. And I said, yes, I have. And he says, first off, nobody believes your age. Everybody here thinks you're like 20 years younger than it says on paper. And the fact that you lost all this weight is like one of the greatest things you could have done for yourself. And we believe, based upon just who you showed up being, your spirit, your presence, all the things, this is a good sign.
Yep. Yeah.
And then they looked up the blood work that I had done on that Saturday, that I had insisted upon having all the blood panels done, and everything came off normal. So these were two things positive in my favor. And so then they were like, okay, so we now need to do a CT scan with contrast to make sure from your abdomen and your lung area that nothing is spread.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And they're like, and it's the holiday and the end of the year, and everybody's getting scanned and this because everybody's getting surgery. And my brain immediately, because we're in LA, goes, well, I'm not getting a facelift.
Yeah.
I think it's sense of humor that kind of keeps me like,
Right.
and he's like, no, I know you're not getting a facelift. He's like, but this is, it's insurance reasons. And I was like, oh, of course.
Right. Right.
And I thought to myself, well, he doesn't know who he's dealing with. I'm going to get this. I'm going to make this happen.
Yeah.
Now it's literally the Tuesday before the Thursday where Thanksgiving. So like, there's not time. And I literally said to Randy when we left the office, we didn't even leave that outside area from the office. I said, I need to sit down here and I need to call these imaging places and I need to get an appointment tomorrow.
Right.
So he was really great about that. And that didn't work out. And the next morning I call my internist and my gynecologist, who, by the way, I had that morning before also reamed a new asshole too. And I mean, I'm not proud of that statement, by the way. It's very unladylike, but at that point, it's my life. And
well, they're calling the procedure a Mona Lisa, and they're calling a hysterectomy taking out the hysteria out of a woman. You can ream him a new asshole. It's fine. It's fine. Why are we still calling it a hysterectomy? It's literally taking the hysteria out of a woman.
Yeah. I mean, how absolutely, from a Latin perspective, insensitive to everything that birth is life, everything that creates life. You're going to actually,
she's hysterical.
Yeah. Well, your penis is a pole that only does so much.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know. Inevitably, I mean, fishes excretes fishes. I don't know what the hell. And so I called my two doctors, the internist and gynecologist, and I told them the situation. I said, I need to get into a CT scan now. Well, I think my gynecologist at that point was so scared of me. He made it happen.
Yeah.
And he literally had an appointment for me on the west side of town. And I got in and I was done by noon. And actually on the way there, my gynecological oncologist called me saying that all the test results had come back from the corkscrew pelvic exam and all the things, and everything was normal. I didn't have uterine cancer. This was a good sign. And I told him, well, I'm on my way to get a CT scan. He's like, you're kidding me. And I was like, no. So you'll have results by Monday, if not sooner. And he was like, incredible. So he already knew who he was dealing with. He knew I was like, no balls to the wall. Like I was like full on, like I'm an advocate. I'm responsible. I'm a take action person. He knew that he had an engaged individual who was not going to be passive and wasn't going to accept no for an answer, and not in a way that was unbecoming. And I don't keep meaning to say that, but I mean in a way that's like, no, I mean, I would want me in the trenches. I would want me to save lives. And I think on a much bigger platform than just my selfish self. And the great news is that Saturday we got the results back. I got it back on my posting on my app, and I knew what it said, but I didn't tell anybody what it said because I wanted to hear it from the doctors. And then of course Monday morning I thought it was kind of ironic that my gynecologist, who, by the way, on the day that I reamed him a new asshole, starts, trying to backpedal and tell me, well, this is why I did this. This is why we don't just jump to conclusions and we don't just go to imaging. And I was like, wrong decision.
Yeah.
It's wrong.
Any woman who excretes blood after having not having had your period for, you know, an obvious 5 or 10 years, whatever. Whenever you see blood, it's the end of the discussion. It needs to be checked out, and it's not always, you know, 9 out of 10 times. Okay, it was just a last hooray. It was nothing. It was fine. But that one time, it can
not
be
a decade later, not a decade later.
Not a decade later, you know, not even 5 years later, after you've had your last period, when there's all of a sudden, when out of nowhere, there's blood, there's something your body is telling you something.
Well, when blood comes out of a penis, you can be guaranteed
Oh
that there
God,
is something
immediately.
royally wrong.
Yeah. Well,
Something
and that's
royally
immediate.
wrong.
Yeah, immediately looked at too. But
You,
I don't even know if all women, you know that if after, you know, after you've gone through your menopause and you've stopped bleeding, that after, you know, after 5 years, definitely when blood shows up, it's wrong. And it's not like, oh, look at me, I'm young again, I'm bleeding. No, it's no, you're not. No, it's something's wrong.
yeah, and it doesn't matter your age. You could, you know, go through early menopause. You could,
Right.
you know, it's
Right.
age is irrelevant. But if
Right.
your body has been stopped from ovulating, it is wrong. And you know, it's one thing for a woman to take a year or two to slough the walls to the final distribution of blood, that last bit of blood.
Yeah.
But again, like you said, to your point, 5 years later, definitely no.
No.
10 years later, absolutely not. And it was my body saying, pay attention,
Yeah.
speak up. And
because it does not hurt. There's no signs really. Maybe a bit of nausea can occur, or you can have some abdominal cramping. But you know, what woman doesn't? You know, what woman is not constipated now and again? What woman, you know, does not have discomfort? So you kind of, you don't know.
you don't know. And the thing was, is I wasn't having any of those other things or signs,
Right.
and which are relative to exactly what you're describing, that can be relative to ovarian cancer, that many women would ignore. Again, they would ignore all those signs and never speak up and never say anything. And then again, if they did, how many people would be believed and heard? And hey, let's go to a place.
But Felicia, so now we're back to that fear question again,
Mhm.
because we're all
Mhm.
scared to hear a doctor tell us that we have cancer. None of us, you know, nobody wants to hear that. We're all scared of it. And you've been told now twice.
Mhm. Yeah, it's
You
really
know?
surreal.
So there's got to be, you know, I understand you go into survival mode and you got angry and, you know, all these emotions raging through your body, but there's got to be a moment, or I don't know, but I can imagine there's going to be a moment where fear sets in.
Well, it's really fascinating because I've asked myself this, because for as fearless as I've been in many aspects of my life, and people think that I'm extremely confident,
Right.
you know, I'm
Because
full
that's
of
how
fear.
that's how you come across, you know, you come across and going through these last months too, you come across as like, yeah, I'm a fighter, I'm a goer, I'm a doer, I'm working out, and I'm going for it, and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and I'm taking care of myself, and you know, I'm being an inspiration to people. But there's also this other side of it, that and that's, I think that was my reason for asking you, like, so what is really, what's going on behind all that? Behind all that, Felicia's here to inspire. Felicia's here to all do all the things that she's doing. But what's happening with the Felicia who is like behind the scenes, like, holy fuck, what's happening here with my body? Is it, is what's happening with that Felicia? Where is that Felicia? What is that Felicia thinking?
Well, a combination of things that even this last Friday, when I was getting ready, when we were in the office for my last chemo treatment.
Right. Congratulations, by the way. That, yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
done.
Thank you.
Yay.
Thank you. Because, I don't know how anybody doesn't have PTSD after that shit.
Right.
And I mean, this last week, side effects have been like, this is the best day I've had because the side effects were unbelievable. Like the nausea, the diarrhea, the exhaust. I mean, the pain. It was just like, and the drugs weren't working. Like the nausea medic, nothing was like it didn't matter how ahead of it I was. But my gynecological oncologist said, ironically, my white blood cells were low in the lab. So every time you go for chemo treatment, they have to do lab work to make sure that you can get the infusion. And the infusion can be anywhere from 6 to 9, 10 hours, depending upon how fast or slow the process goes, or if they have to slow it down, depending upon how your body receives it. And let's just start with like all the needles that go in you. Shit. I mean, it took them 3 times to get the needle into me on Friday. Including twice with the IV team, who, is what they call when nobody else can do it. I mean, it just gives me gag reflex now, just thinking about like, just stay the F away from me.
In your hand, how? Your arm, in your elbow crease, where do they stick the needle?
Oh my God, they never once put in the same place in all 6 treatments over from January to April. It never landed in the same place. In some cases, even though there were 3 weeks in between each treatment, some veins were still bruised from the treatment before. So there was definitely no way. So twice it went in my left arm. The other 4 times went in my right arm. Even when I just grab my arm right now, I can still feel a little bit of a bruising. And it's not that it looks bruised, it just, you can feel it to the touch. And they would say that my veins are good, but they're deep. And I mean, you can drink all the fluids till the cows come home, and I drink a lot of water, and I would be prepped for all of that. But it's a crapshoot. I mean, my last nurse had been an oncology nurse for over 20 plus years. And she said, if I start out my day not getting the needle in right, my day is off the rest of the day. Well, of course it is, because it's a crapshoot putting a needle in anybody, because it's not a systematic structure. You're not dealing with the same veins on every person. You're not dealing with the same situation every time. Every time it's different. I would not want that job to save my life. Ironically. And yet there it was, saving my life supposedly. And the reason why I had to do chemo was because what we didn't talk about up to this point, and I promised you I will talk about the fear, is that I did have surgery. I promise you. I'm not avoiding it. I promise you. But I was lucky enough to have surgery in the first week of December after we got the CT scans back. I was lucky enough to have the hysterectomy, and so I was no longer hysterical. Unbelievable. And I was supposedly supposed to be bedridden for 6 to 8 weeks, and I was up and walking. Like, I was asking to get the catheter out of me the very next morning so I could get up and go to the bathroom and walk the floors and all that. And I was lucky that when they went in, that there was only in 2 spots where 40% of women, it's spread already throughout and it's too late. And I don't Google doctor, I don't play Google doctor. We've talked about this. I
Yeah.
don't do that. That's your job. In
And
our
I did,
relationship,
and I
that's
did,
your
and I
job.
did. I did. I researched.
You're the
Yeah.
researcher in our partnership. You always have been. And I'm just like, okay, let's do this. And you're like, let me research that. And so, I think those are also part of my survival mechanisms. And I think it's also part of just like my gut feeling or whatever. Like, I'm just going to, and I don't know where this comes from, Marie. I really don't know where that characteristic comes from, because I do walk around going, is the cup half full or is the cup half empty? Like, am I going to make it through this, or I'm going to thrive and survive and win, or am I going to like gloom and doom? And I know that I always have to figure out how I'm going to win. Like, that's my mindset. I always have to get up and figure it out and win. And to that point, half the time I think, oh, I'm not even far, like I haven't even done most of the things I've ever wanted to imagine doing. And then I go, but
I'm low.
many
I'm
people,
low. Okay, I'm low on battery, so I just have to
Yeah.
plug in. I'm just gonna
Plug in.
move around a bit. But yeah, keep talking.
Yeah. So ironically, to that point, it's like I've always had what other people go, who the fuck are you? You've gone through all these things. You've had, 9 lives. And
Right.
I don't see it that way. And I don't know why I don't see it that way. And the irony is, like, when I went through papillary thyroid cancer, the comment was, well, if you're going to get a cancer, this is the cancer to get, because you're not going to die from this. And it was very cavalier kind of a statement. And I remember thinking back then, wow, that is just like, okay, so I'm not going to die. And I've got cancer, and it didn't happen once, it happened 4 times. Okay, but I soared through it, even like coming out of surgery and, being back up in the mountains in triple digit heat, taking care of my teams and my leads, and doing things that my teams would have thought unthinkable and were unthinkable, frankly. And on Friday, when we went in for my last chemo treatment, and the oncologist mentioned about how I've thrived through this life-threatening disease, I just remember thinking, nobody is ever, and I've survived domestic violence, and that's a whole nother kind of life-threatening disease.
Right. Right.
I don't know what makes me who I am, because I do have fear, but I want to say to that point that I concluded this time, and this is something that I'm working through, that when you've been told you have a life-threatening disease, and yet you've been given this opportunity by aligning with the right people, the right team, the timing, even though 4 months had gone by, because I did ask myself, and I did ask the team, had you caught it 4 months earlier when this first started happening, could it have been not early stage 3 ovarian cancer? Could it have been, like, whoa, who knows? Maybe my organs still would have been, maybe my hysterical organs still would have been in place.
Right.
Like, who knows? And and so I asked myself things like that. But when you hear that you've, knock wood, so far survived a life-threatening disease, you start to conclude, I have nothing to fucking be in fear of.
Right.
And it's
nothing
not
fear, but fear itself, perhaps.
Yeah. And to that point, there are things that I personally need to allow myself to trust myself to do no fucking differently than I have just handled this situation. And like I handled many other situations, and that the only person that stops me is me. And that is a big kind of mindset of walking through fear, that I don't know what it's like to be the audience or the person reading a post of mine that I never intended on going public. But when I did go public from my hospital room last December, and people just were coming out of the woodworks, and anybody who had seen me physically leading up to that, they were, I don't know what they were thinking, and it's not for me to know, but it was either like, oh well, then that makes sense how she dropped all that weight. She was
Right.
sick.
Right.
No, that had nothing to do with the
No.
other thing at
No.
all.
No.
Thank God
No.
I had lost the weight. Thank God I was in shape to endure through all of this. But the fear is a funny thing that has always creeped in because of trauma, that has always creeped in because of unknown, that has always creeped in because, both of us have worked with some of the best in the industry. And yeah, you've been the best of the best, and you're part of the industry as I've supposedly been considered. But it's like a chess game. You can be in the position here, and the next day you're in the position over here, and the next day you're in the position over here, and nothing's guaranteed. So it's really a matter of you standing by your side, not abandoning yourself, and believing and trusting in, look, life is not guaranteed. This is a gift. This is all in your gratitude. And this is all in like your good fortune, genetics, the best kind of medical team you can surround yourself with, and the communities and connections. And I mean, I was just writing about this, that it's for all of those things that I think that I have done as well as I have done. And many have said, oh, but it's because of you, not because of all those extraneous things. And it's like, well, I can't, nobody does it alone. And nor should anybody take credit for that.
Right.
And I would never do such a thing. I'm not, I mean, we all have ego, but I'm not that kind of a entitled son of a bitch and with an ego like that. That's just not how I roll at all.
No.
I'm much more on the other side of the spectrum. I'll give everybody else the credit, because it really did take all my communities that raised me up like I choose to raise people up. The difference is that I no longer want to deal with BS. I no longer want to deal with anyone or anything toxic. Like, if I didn't already know that, that is so emblazoned in me. There is just no, like, it almost makes me feel like right now, like I'm free falling.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not sure where I'm going to land.
Right. Right. Uncharted territory.
Totally uncharted territory, because the sky is the limit now. Like, I had somebody say to me yesterday, how were you producing your podcast during all this? I said, oh God, I was delivering to my producers a podcast who was driving into Cedars to do the surgery. And they're like, what? And I said, and yeah, we were dropping every Monday while I was going through chemo treatments. How are you so unstoppable? And then they stopped themselves, and they've known me for like 16 years. And they were like, who am I talking to? Of course you're unstoppable. There isn't anything that I haven't seen you accomplish.
Right.
And it's interesting, Marie, because I don't think of, I think of myself as I have that capability, and that I know that. But there's been a lot of incidences that have come along the way, whether it's within my own family upbringing or within the industry that we work in, that can really undermine your confidence, or having nothing to do with who you are and who you show up being and who you are as a value of an entity, of an energy source. But there's so much dysfunction and unhealthiness around. And I've always been a person who believes and was raised in a world that you took responsibility and you took accountability. And if you needed to work shit out, you went and got a therapist. And I mean, that's been true since, I was a little kid. And it wasn't that I wasn't in therapy as a little kid, but I saw parents who were actively doing it when that was just not talked about. And here we are in 2023, where still mental health is like, God help, it's barely okay to still talk about it. Why? I mean, I just posted a podcast that I did at the very beginning of starting my podcast about why is it such a shameful thing to talk about. And I think one of my strengths is that I'll talk about anything. I try to be direct, even though I talk about a lot of things to get to the point.
Right.
But I think it's because it's a layered statement. It's not a direct always statement. It's not a yes or a no or a black and a white. I think it's very, very layered. And, I think that fear is something that we're not born with. I think fear is put upon us in many cases, that comes from generations of other people's shit. And I think then you carry that generationally, energetically. And what do you do to release it and to heal it and to move through it? And I think that any fear that I took on, because I'm such a sensitive, empathic human being, that it's my job to no longer carry that generational shit around, and no longer okay to take on other people's shit that has nothing to do with my purpose of why I'm here.
Right.
So, going back to the being told you have a life-threatening disease, and then you're given the gift to get it eradicated out of you. And now I've gone through the process of having it microscopically, hopefully insured to not have the opportunity to grow. And I will continue to be taken care of for the next couple of years through post-medical ways that are yet to be completely, explained, but I have an idea, post-genetic testing, that there's no room for fear.
Right. There's no room for fear. And yet it creeps in now and again, I'm sure.
Yeah, but in a very surreal way. And,
right.
It's not like being stoned. It's not like, oh, I'm detached. Oh, I can just kind of escape. No, I'm very present. But I definitely think that we all have the mechanisms. I'll never forget, after surviving being with a violent alcoholic.
Right. Right. But speaking of fear, because that's fear also fear for your life.
Oh, yeah.
And I think, when somebody is scared, fearful, in general, fear is fear of dying. Because what else could you be scared of? You're scared of I don't know, somebody coming at you. So fear has to do with dying.
Yeah.
So So now that you've gone through this, and sorry, I'm interrupting you were going on, moving into the alcoholic husband, abusive husband.
He wasn't a husband, thank God.
Well,
Not to interrupt.
but you know,
Partner at the time.
a partner. So fear is comes from dying, right?
Mhm.
So are you now saying I'm less fearful of dying? Death does not scare you?
I
Does
can't.
that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh, of course. And I've thought about this in this last week because, hopefully one lives another 30, 40 years. But who
Let's
knows?
do it.
You know,
Let's do it.
let's
Oh, let's
let's
just
do
do
it.
it. Fuck it. Let's just do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
And because there's a lot more celebrating to do, there's a lot more
Oh,
seeing to do, a lot more
oh,
living, all those things.
yeah.
Listen, one hopes for having witnessed, our parents going through the demise and all those things. One hopes for the best circumstances and the least amount of suffering and the most financial best environments that you get to either be in your home or be surrounded by your loved ones and all those things. And look, neither one of us have children, but children don't guarantee any of that shit, because I watched that where children did not show up for their parents. And one just hopes that they can live a quality life that is with honor and respect and valued, and that you're not shoved off to the side because you no longer, because we, more so probably in the US, I don't know, Europe has always been said to have a lot more honor for the elderly. I don't know if that's true or not. With time, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
It's
I don't
probably
either.
shifted. It's
Yeah,
probably shifted.
Yeah, it's shifted.
But I would like to think that the tie-in to the violent alcoholic is I definitely knew what fear was then. I definitely feared for my
Yeah.
life. I
Yeah.
did not fear for my life during this period, and I can't explain why. And I think it was because I'm not really sure I can explain it.
It's well, perhaps I don't know either, but maybe perhaps when you're living with a violent alcoholic, so it's immediate.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody's coming at you,
Mm-hmm.
threatening you, joking you, doing, ungodly things.
Mm-hmm.
That could possibly mean the end of your life right then and there. And this process, you're starting with the doctor who the oncologist who said, I'm here to listen to you and I'm here to cure you. What a great doctor, could have been this angsty person and said, well, God, this is all, we don't know what's going to happen. It's just, it's this, it's that. No, he was direct. We're going to cure you. That's it. And he gave you a mindset that you already have. And you could build on that. And so you can move forward. And I think maybe the alcoholic comes at you and fuck, I may die right now. Is that
There's
maybe
no question?
The
yeah, no, it is 180-degree difference. And the fear factor, I mean, the fact that I survived by the hands of a violent alcoholic the way I did, off and on over the period of time that I did, losing 3 babies, being on my own, never missing a day of work, having 3 dogs in my life, no shelter taking me in with my dogs. And I was safe. I would have been safer on the street than in my own home. And I never lived on the street. And, you're talking about an educated, accomplished human being.
Yeah.
And this is the thing that we, again, correlate with, like, oh, she doesn't know any better because she's uneducated or socioeconomically. Well, no, that shit
I,
exists across all
oh,
levels
I
of life.
probably, yeah, that's all across the board. And it's probably even scarier when it's, when it happens in environments where nobody talks about anything because, you know, keeping up appearances, that's what we do, and everything is fine. And yeah, so that's even more terrifying and scary than, yeah.
Well, I think that's our demise of our society, is our lack of our ability to be authentic and transparent.
Yeah, yeah, no,
Because God for fucking bid we be the truth. God
yeah,
forbid we be an actual seeker and seriously curious and really have an authentic conversation. I
yeah,
mean, how many people have these kind of conversations? Again, this is why I personally wanted to do this platform, because I'm completely the opposite. I have nothing to hide. I said to my producers last night in a meeting, I said, who do you know talks about finances and their sex life and like going through chemo and all the things that, and I'm not looking for a badge. I'm just saying, I just want to talk it out. I just want to get it out because
well, it's
we all have
it's
something to
yeah,
learn from it.
it's very important. I remember a couple of years ago, a very dear friend of mine, and unfortunately she's no longer with us, and fortunately for her, because she was really truly done and wanted to go. So okay, but she was, I think at the time, in her early 80s, and she told me, when I cough, I pee. So she called it something, I don't know, she combined the two words, and it was in Dutch. It was, something like pee cough, or I don't know, something. And she said, and the other day I had, my sister was over, and two other friends, and she brought up the subject. She said, when I cough, I pee. And these girlfriends, also in their 80s, said, oh yeah, well, you just go to the store and you buy these pads, and that's it. And she said, why has nobody ever spoken about this? You guys have been doing this for years. How come you've never talked about it? Why? But you don't.
Yeah,
Because it's not
no.
done. It's not done. And it's shocking when, supposedly it's shocking when we bring up subjects in, in situations, and you ask questions, and, it's shocking when you do, and you're not supposed to ask these things, and you're, whatever the subject may be, whether it be sex, whether it be money, whether it be whatever. But, how else are you to find out?
I mean, aren't we here to learn from each other?
You have
Aren't
to
we?
secretly Google everything and then erase your history so nobody can find out. I don't know. So I have another question for you. What was it like losing your hair?
That was something that I remember. Whew, I, wow. I'd love to think that I have no vanity,
Mm-hmm.
but at the same time, all my life, I have had people love my hair. And I don't think I say that in a way that it's like, oh, so therefore it's an attention getter. No, because it's not been like that all my life. But
But you had
I
a mop.
remember,
You had an enormous, beautiful, curly, thick head of hair.
and it was, thank you, and it was long, and it was
Yep.
all the things. It's like I was lucky. I was lucky to be blessed with a gorgeous head of hair that, I had nothing to do with it. And I just And it was at a really beautiful stage before all this had taken course.
Right.
And I remember when I was told, so when I had the surgery, I did not know that I was going to have to go through chemo. I thought, okay, great. I'm going to heal through Christmas and New Year's, and I'm going to be back to work, and life is going to go on.
Right.
And in my follow up at the end of December was when I found out that they wanted me to do chemo treatment. And I remember just kind of having like the wind punched out of me.
Right.
And I was like, oh God, okay. So the three things that came up for me, first off, I was always like, never, ever, 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 never chemo.
Because you did not go through chemo with the thyroid, right? That was
It was iodine radiation, which was a pill. And it was where you were isolated for up to 48 hours. Yeah, which is a trip in and of itself. But no, I did not go through chemo. And so I knew that between needles, nausea, and hair loss, you're talking to the wrong girl.
Right. Not doing it. Yeah. Yeah.
No, you called the wrong number.
Yes, sorry. Yeah.
So I remember my doctor sitting there and telling me, look, we all know how beautiful your hair is. We're all on the same page. Like I wasn't even talking. He's like,
Right.
well, we've all concluded you got the most gorgeous head of hair.
Right.
And yes, you're going to lose it. And yes, it's going to grow back. But you need to do the chemo for us to ensure that microscopically. And so I remember when I thought I was going to go back to work, by the way, once I started chemo.
I remember you were thinking, yeah, I'm
gonna go back. I was just going to go back to work, but I kept thinking like, okay, how do I go back to work while getting chemo, not talk about it, function as a normal everyday situation, but look like myself. Yeah, looking like myself. And I'm a person who doesn't wear a lot of makeup. I like to be really natural. My hair, I don't brush it. It's what I call kind of fuckable bedhead hair. It's like, and it's not meant to, I just got lucky because of how the texture of it was and how it just is. And I've always felt, even as a person who does hair professionally, that less is more. So, you get a great haircut, you massage that head of hair, you shake it, you go. And I believe that for all my clients. And it wasn't until I got into the film industry and fashion and blah, 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 where I had to start using products to create continuity and structure in a way that, not all heads of hair does the same thing. So when this reality came into play, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my eyebrows, my eyelashes, my hair. How am I going to, so I literally started ordering eyelashes.
Right. Okay.
I wasn't really thinking of wigs at the time because I was like, oh God, even though I had thousands of wigs in my own stock that I had sold like a handful of years back because I wasn't utilizing them. And I remember thinking, yeah, man, there's no goddamn way I'm wearing a wig. As much as I know how to manage wigs and I know how to put them on people's heads and make them look flawless, I'm just not doing that. And I was like, I'll figure out. And yet I had no idea how my head shape was going to be. And I had no idea how I was going to manage the transition. And I got a bunch of eyelashes delivered. And I was like, this is insane. And they weren't big eyelashes. They were really, really natural. And I was just like, oh, this is so inauthentic. This is so not who I am. And I've always had nice eyelashes, but I was like, okay, if I lose them, I lose them, and blah, 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 blah. So I remember reaching out to my girlfriend, another one of my sweet girlfriends. who I also have worked with over the years, and who now lives in Atlanta. And reaching out to her, I text her that I'd like to be able to speak with her. And she basically said to me, I'm trying to remember, I think it was like end of December I reached it. It was end of December. It was before the New Year's. And she basically told me that she was so busy with family and all the things, she probably couldn't talk to me for about another month. And I remember thinking, yeah, that's not going to work.
Work.
Newsflash, I've been diagnosed with cancer and I'd love to be able to talk with you. She texted me so fast back, when can you talk? And she and I, at that point, so we were also going to be doing a podcast, ironically, and that was and so we, in the talking through the podcast and on our own, had basically made a plan that, all right, well, why don't we just cut your hair? We'll do it virtually. We'll cut your hair before you even start chemo. And chemo was determined to be the first week of January. And I thought I was going to do chemo on the 3rd of January and be back to work January 6th. That was my first day back to work. And I was like, okay, good. I've got enough days to recover and blah, 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 blah. Well, then it ended up that January 3rd wasn't happening. It was January 5th, and I was supposed to go to work on January 6th. And I was like, oh God, I don't know that I can do this.
Right.
And for somebody like me, who's such what I consider to be very dependable and responsible, and when I show up, that I'm going to deliver a job and I'll pick up the pieces that other people are dropping.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew that I couldn't know what that was going to be like. I knew at that moment I was going to have to think twice about showing up for work. And I remember having a discussion with Randy, and he's like, babe, this isn't, you don't need to defend it. If you can't work, you're not working. And he gave me the first real freedom to make that decision in a way that I felt safe and that I felt, okay, I can give myself, but also to the point where the people I was working with, thankfully, because I was on a big movie, that I had wanted to work with this team for a long time, the department head, and then the other people I was working with through commercials and other projects, all these people I really adored. Like, I was really in a sweet spot with the kind of people that I drew in.
Right. Wouldn't you know it? Yeah. Yeah.
Just like, are you effing kidding me right now?
Fucking kidding me. Yeah. Yeah. I'm turning on my heater. I'm
Yeah.
here turning on my heater. Yeah.
And each and every one of these people couldn't have been more gracious, and couldn't have given me more love and support, and just were like, whenever you're ready, you can come back. We'll always work together, all the things. Right. And I also think that, to the point of, because I was so authentic, transparent, and honest, and I didn't side, I wasn't shady. I wasn't making up excuses. I was really direct about my situation, that they really appreciated my authenticity. And therefore, I think it created more trust and respect to build relationships even deeper and further and going forward, because they knew that again, I can't speak for them, but my sense was they knew that they were dealing with somebody that they'd want to be doing business with, even though right now I was not in the position to do that. So getting back to the hair part, Louise Anthony and I thought, okay, we'll cut my hair the weekend before my first chemo treatment. Well, when I mentioned to a bunch of people, and I don't mean a bunch, an immediate,
Hmm.
immediate group of people, that I was going to cut my hair before my first chemo treatment, it was dumbfounding. Everybody's like, well, why are you going to cut your hair? Why are you going to cut your hair before you even get chemo? You don't know what's going to happen. Maybe your hair will stay. You don't know. You could be the anomaly. You could be, well, each person was like, whoa, are you attached to my hair more than I'm attached to my hair? Like, it was really a moment of like, wow, people like, okay, okay, well, maybe I shouldn't cut my hair right now. So we didn't. And, I've always done my own hair for most of my life. I cut it. If I color it, I'm the one who colors it. So it's very, it's a form of meditation for me. So I don't, I kind of just I just take care of myself. So we didn't do it the first weekend. And then I have chemo. And then we were supposed to cut it that next weekend. And that Sunday after chemo, oh, I was not in good shape. I was dizzy. I nearly collapsed coming out of the shower. I nearly collapsed. As a matter of fact, our dog walker was coming over because Randy was working. And I thought he was going to find me on the floor in the bedroom, like maybe or maybe not wrapped in a towel.
Right.
And I was horrified because I thought I was going to black out. And so naturally, we didn't cut my hair that weekend. And then the next weekend, we were going to cut my hair, since every 3 weeks with treatment. And my hair was looking so fucking beautiful. Like it was going into this, like kind of stage. Like I don't know what was happening. Like I was looking better and healthier, and yet I had this poison in me. And Louise and I were supposed to get together again virtually. And I was like, man, and she, like my hair just like is like on point. What the fuck? And she's like, let's not cut it. Let's just hold out. And I was told that I would lose my hair within 10 days to 2 weeks after the first chemo treatment. So it was just like, I was waiting to like wake up, and it was just like going to be off my head.
On the pillow, in the shower, on the pillow. Who knew? Yeah, who knows?
I'd heard every story possible.
Sure. Yeah.
And so
stories. Yeah.
and so I was dealing with it very gently. I didn't like, pull. I like was very like, when I shampoo it, I was very like gentle with it,
Right.
like
yeah. Don't rock the boat. Don't rock the boat.
And it was in the week going into the second chemo treatment that I was working out, and I felt in the nape of my head down here, like it was like binding itself. It was like, bed head, like knots. And I was like, oh, I gotta brush. And I don't brush my hair. It's a rarity that I brush my hair. I was like, oh, I'm gonna have to brush that out so it doesn't get like worse. And I sit down to brush my hair, and I've never, in all the work I've done with hair, on humans, on wigs, period. And I didn't play with dolls when I was a little girl, so I couldn't have given two shits about that. I was like, there's hair coming out of the brush, and there's hair coming out of the brush, and there's more hair coming out of the brush. And I was like, I'd never visually witnessed this. And I was just looking, and I was just like, what? And yet there's all this hair still on my head. And so I was really like, what the fuck? So I decided to braid my hair so it couldn't get tangled.
Right.
And I even took a photograph of my braid. And I'd photographed my hair quite a bit before, like right before chemo started, during chemo, and during that period, because I really want to document it, because I thought, well, what if I do need a wig, or I wanted a wig? I wanted to make sure that, and everybody was like, oh, now you can be free to do all the different things. I'm like, man, I'm not showing up with purple hair. I'm not showing up with an A line, 1980s do. I'm just not doing it. Yeah, asymmetrical. I've done it all. I mean, I've cut it, done it, delivered it, done it all. That's not what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And so I put this braid in. And it ended up that in the middle of the night, I found that like I couldn't sleep with this braid, and it wasn't tight, but I just couldn't sleep with it. So I undid it, and I woke up the next morning. Okay, boom, boom, boom. Well, within that day or so, those knots started happening again. So there I go back. And I start brushing, and all this hair is coming out of the brush. Long, beautiful strands of hair. But there's still all this hair on my head. So there's no bald spots. There's no.
And did you feel it leaving your head, or it's just like you're brushing your hair and you have a brush full of hair, but does it, I don't know, what am I asking?
Literally just hair in the brush.
Did you feel it coming out of your head? No.
And that was what was so weird. I did not feel it coming out of my head. It was just long strands of healthy hair coming off in the brush.
Right.
And, like the hair was like this long. Right. And so at that point, I decided that I'm going to do all these different braids all around my head. Yeah. And keep it in sections. So when it came time to cut it, they were already in sections, but that they were braided. Right. And this way, so again, they couldn't get tangled. But what was happening behind the scenes was my head was creating its own kind of tension headache. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And I couldn't figure out like what was happening. Is this a side effect of chemo? What? Well, in the middle of the night, I woke up with such a tension headache, and as if my hair was going, how did I describe it? It was like being in the middle of the sea in a dinghy, and there's like 8 men, and there's not enough room, going, hold on, mate, we're about to get swung over the boat, and if you don't hold on, you're, like in an abandoned ship kind of. Story short, I had to take out the braids because it was just so much tension. I woke up the next morning and I had 3 Bob Marley Rastafarian nests. What was happening was my hair was binding to itself while it was releasing the mother papillas from my scalp. Right. And going into this whole tension, like, hold on, mate, we're about to fall off. If you don't grab on, you're gonna lose it. And I was like, I woke up with these birds' nests, like 3 birds' nests. And I was like, holy shit, I love reggae music, but what the fuck has just happened to my beautiful? And I literally took these 3 birds' nests and I bound them up on my head, and I put like a little like clip. And all of a sudden I was like in the 1800s. And it was like the females that like probably never got to bathe and had God knows what bacteria and bugs and all sorts of shit. And that's why their hairdos look like that. And that's what my hair looked like. And I remember I was like, I had a podcast to do with a friend, and I had put a scarf on my head. And the first thing I said to her is, so we're going to be doing Fiddler on the Roof. And it was was my boarding school mate. And she was just like, well, of course you are, because you do theater. And I was like, oh, come on, I'm not that dramatic. And she was like, no, but I would accept that you're in costume. And I was like, okay, I'll accept that answer. But as we're like doing the interview, I'm like, like it's just getting to me. And I kept texting Louisa going, all right, this is the transformation that's happened. At some point, we've got to release. Well, it was her mom's, like, forgive me, Louisa, because I don't remember her mom's age, if it was 91, 95. It was some very special birthday that I had no space to interrupt the process.
Right.
But my head was like, get this fucking hair off. My gut was saying, if I release this hair, this tension headache will go away. And I never was somebody to, like, the last time I had a really short haircut was in college when I was wearing like camouflage, and I was like the least feminine looking possible in that moment.
The 80s, right?
It was the 80s.
It was
yes,
the
it
80s.
was.
Good
It was
old
the 80s.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so I texted her and I I texted her and I was like, I think I have got to cut my hair today or tonight. And she was like, and I said, and I know that we've been walking and talking through this process for like the last 4 or 5 weeks. I don't think I can wait.
You've now had 2 sets of chemo, right?
I had not yet gone through the second. I was about to.
All the effect of the first chemo. Okay.
Yeah. So this was a Tuesday before the Thursday that I was supposed to go in for chemo.
Okay.
For the second round. And it ended up that night I walked into my studio and I went, okay. And Randy was at work. And that was the other thing. I asked him, do you want to be there when I cut my hair? Because I was like, prepare yourself. I don't want you to show up and all of a sudden I'm without hair. I want you to be able to like witness it so you can emotionally go through this. If this is an emotional attachment, like I don't want you to showing up at home and girlfriend has like just gone from like long fuckable hair to bird's nest to nothing. Like I'm just giving you the opportunity to like say what's good for you. And he's like, whatever you need to do, don't worry. I'm mentally prepared. And I'm like, okay. And Louise was, she couldn't be present, and I respected that. So I went into the studio and I went to get my clippers, and I went to take my clippers. And I remember thinking, stay 2 inches off the scalp just to give space. Well, my clippers couldn't even engage because the bird's nests were so like so dense, so bound. And I was like, well, this is ironic. I thought, I said, I went from let's cut your hair before this whole thing starts, and you can donate or you can have it as a point of reference or whatever. And now you've gone to the other extreme where basically the only thing you could donate it to is creating your own bird's nest for the birds in your front yard. Like, the Audubon Society.
Yeah.
So, so it ended up that the clippers wouldn't go through, and I was like, shit, okay, grab a pair of shears. And I literally went into those birds' nests and I had to cross dissect through, like work my way through. And, shears and me are like 2 peas in a pod. Like I love to cut hair. This was nothing like I had ever experienced in all the years. And I've been cutting hair since 1982. So long time.
Yeah.
And as I was cutting, the 2 inches that I gave myself grace for, it was like hair filaments were like unwinding. And as I got through all the mess, the tension headache went away. Like from the final, like all the tension went away. It was all my hair bound.
Right.
And there I sat there and just was like, holy shit. And this is what I had so this is how it's been ever since. It's never been
So it
like
was immediately thinned, or
it was immediately, it wasn't
of,
dense on the scalp.
right.
No,
It was
most of it had released from the scalp on its own.
Okay.
And to that point, the next day, that Wednesday, I called one of the nurses from the team.
Yeah.
And I asked her, because I told her what happened. And I said, is this something that's really normal? Because like, nobody talks about this. And she said, it's ironic. She says, no, nobody does talk about it. And it's called folliculitis. And what is happening is exactly what you talked about, where the strand is releasing from the papilla, and when that's happening, all of that release, you can actually feel the release. And that's what I was feeling. I was feeling the release while my hair was binding, holding on to dear life, like, stay in the boat, man. We're gonna pretend we got this. And I thought, oh, well, maybe I'll show up to the second chemo treatment proving that I still have my head of hair. There was no goddamn way.
Right.
There was no way.
You did it all. You were all alone, and now you're sitting there with a fuzzy head.
A fuzzy head. Yeah.
Did you cry?
And
Did you cry?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Did you cry? A little.
Strangely, I don't remember crying. But what has happened since, and to your original question, what has happened since is one podcast I had with my boarding school mate where she talked about like how she and her partner shaved their heads to support a friend of theirs that was going through cancer, thinking that they were being supportive, and then started being approached like, oh, are you sick? And she was like, no, we're not sick. And then she was like, wow, this was a selfish act for me to do something that I'm not going through this. And here I thought I was being supportive.
Right.
And other people would be like, oh, isn't it freeing? And I'd be like, no, this is not freeing. This is not something I would have chosen to do. And now I live in hats, which is what you and I were talking about that one day. You and I were talking rather, and I said, and as we were talking, the vision came to my head, which was the many hats that I wear, and where I sat in front of the camera and I put all these different hats on because I wanted to see how do I look in all the hats that I have in my owning. And it wasn't all of them, but it was many of them. And I ended up doing this art piece, so to speak, and making a public statement. And that's what I sent to you, was the collage of all my hats that I wear, so to speak.
Right.
And it was my way of me mentally working through this new moment. Like, even all the podcasts that I've conducted this whole time, this is the first time, though I've publicly shown myself without hair, this is the first podcast, ironically, through all my chemo treatments and everything, that I've sat here without a hat on my head.
Right. Congratulations.
Thanks. Because,
you look beautiful. Great head. And you look healthy and you look happy. And yeah.
Thank you.
I'm not, and weirdly enough, I was not shocked when I saw you. I think it would have been weirder to look at you with a hat on. I probably would have asked you to take it off.
Knowing you, I think I would have, I probably subconsciously knew that because I knew you would want to see, because we don't see each other when we talk, because we're on
Right,
WhatsApp when we talk. And
right.
so, and so, we haven't seen each other for a very long time. I mean, I'm sitting here across from you going, you are so ravishingly gorgeous. I love seeing your face. Oh, I'm never going to accept us talking together, not seeing your face again. Just putting it
Okay.
out there now.
We'll just have to do it like this. Yeah.
Yeah,
We can
exactly.
via WhatsApp. We can see each other too. But
Yeah.
sometimes it's just, when you're talking and you're at the same time, you're moving around, you're
Oh, yeah.
multitasking, you're doing this, you're doing that, you're in the kitchen, and now you're doing something for the animals, and now you're outside on your new beautiful lawn, and you know how it goes. So yeah,
100%.
but I would have asked you to take off your hat.
So you're going to have to tune in, because next week is another juicy half of this conversation. And I mean, the truth is Marie and I could have continued on for another 3.5 hours of conversation. So join us next week, where we have the remainder of this conversation continue. And I look forward to you sharing, joining, subscribing, and being a part of the Camp Fifi Uncensored podcast community, because it's conversations like this where we love to join around the campfire and create connections and conversations that people really are yearning for and don't even know it. And it's when we sit down with my guests that the realization and the light bulb moments that go off, and the joy and the can't believe that 2, 3, 4 hours have gone by. That is exactly what's happening here and why we love doing this. So come next week and hear and listen more, and join us on YouTube and hear all the content on our libraries and all listening platforms. We're just so loving sharing this information and entertaining you with all these kind of interviews. So pull up a chair, grab that cannoli, and keep joining us. Much love. Bye for now.